And now, here we are, episode 4, Unscripted Let's Talk. And my name is Mary Eggleston, and I am, of course, with Sarah Schaffner, who's going to tell you what she does. Who are you, Sarah?
Good question. Well, currently I am the director of family service in Sioux Falls, which is a nonprofit mental health clinic. And I've probably been in the mental health field for a total of, 20 years, maybe a few more than that, in various capacities. So it's always been a passion of mine. I did leave the field for, maybe a year or so, but then was like, I think I'm ready to go back.
What did you try to do, Sarah? Were you in like a rock and roll band?
Well, that only lasts a couple of weeks. But then I was working with adults, low-income adults, and in the social work capacity, just trying to help them live independently for as long as they could, stay out of nursing homes, things like that. So, yeah.
And I think I've referenced in another episode that I've been a psychotherapist for a little over 40 years, working in that way in various capacities. I ran a treatment center for a period of time, developed an adolescent program, and now mostly my work is with adults and a lot of work with trauma, stuff like that. So I thought we'd give a little bit of our backgrounds. We'll give a little bit more as we go along. But one of the things I want to say is that Family Service is our sponsor and our producer of this podcast, and we've not said that before. And I want to give Family Service of Sioux Falls credit for putting this together, and Sarah especially credit for creating the environment in which we do the podcast. So
thanks.
Thank you.
So combination, with Family Service, and then obviously, Mary, this has been, a passion of yours and something that you wanted to be able to, this outlet to share all the knowledge that you have.
Empty my head.
All that experience.
I'm emptying my head. So today we're going to talk about probably the core of everything. And we're titling this podcast, Your Interpretation of Your Life is Your Life. And, you think about, okay, so what does that mean? And I remember as a young therapist, as I talked with people, this statement kept coming into my mind of what you image is what you create. And I didn't fully understand it. I do now, but although maybe I don't even fully understand it now. But, the idea that what you believe about your life is your life. If you look at interpretation of an event, people think, oh, that makes me feel, or that made me respond in a certain way. But, if we just take a neutral thing, like a dark alley, out of context, just a dark alley, and you bring two people to look at the dark alley. One person is from New York City. Another person is from some little town in Minnesota. I'm not picking on South Dakota today. For some reason, I'm going to pick on Minnesota. Nice. So some little bitty town in Minnesota. The person from New York City looks at the dark alley and thinks rapes, muggings, murder. Their emotion is frightened, and their response is avoid the dark alley. But if you're from some little bitty town in Minnesota, you look at the dark alley perhaps and you think, hey, shortcut home. And your feeling is great, and you take the alley. And the alley is just the alley. If somebody from New York moves to that little town in Minnesota and they maybe go into like a dry cleaner's place and they leave their dry cleaning and they say, well, yeah, okay, come back and get it when it's done, blah, blah, blah. And they don't give them a ticket. And the person from New York goes, I need a claim ticket. I need a claim ticket. And the other person goes, are you crazy? No, you don't. Everybody knows who you are. Right. But that was just right. And then God help the person from a little town if somebody doesn't give them a heads up if they move to New York City.
Right, that's not probably going to end well.
It's not going to. Sarah just said that's not going to end well.
But you're right, though. I mean, we think that our circumstances are what dictate our reality, but it's not. It's the story that we're telling ourselves that's really dictating our reality. And like you said, that example you used with the alley, completely neutral, that has no meaning. None. Nothing has meaning.
Right.
The meaning comes from what we give it. Yeah. We give it meaning from our own lens.
What we project onto whatever it is. I'm reminded of when my husband and I took a trip to Costa Rica a number of years ago. And the way they view stop signs and stoplights is very different than what we do. They're guidelines.
Okay.
We figured this out. We're driving and I'm riding shotgun, he's driving, and we'd come up on a stoplight and I would say, no, I don't think you stop at this one. No, red light, but don't stop. No, just keep going. Yeah, okay. Wait, well, this one looks like we better stop. Everybody was just fine. We saw no accidents the entire time we were there. None. And people are just flowing with what needs to happen. It's very right brain. We got good at it. But what a different way to look at things.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
We got directions from one young man who spoke fluent English, and he laughed as he gave us the directions. He said, you have to realize where you are. And by then, we'd been there a while. We said, well, we're working on it. And he said, so what I'm going to tell you is that you're going to go about it's maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles, and you're going to see a cow. And the cow is always there. And then you're going to turn left. And we're like, okay. And that's...
Right.
It's a different view. And you might find that same turn at the cow in some rural areas where they know, well, there's a cow. The cow's always there. Don't worry about it. And it was. The cow was there. It's just amazing. And so, it's you think about, okay, so these people see the world differently.
Right.
And not, so this idea that there's some objective truth in how it has to be isn't accurate.
Right. We create these rules that oftentimes we never take the time to figure out, well, why am I doing this, or who am I doing this for? Like, we just accept it as that's how we are, that's how the world is, or how the world should be.
How the world should be. And we were probably, and now we're going to really sound like therapists, we were probably given most of these ideas when we were children.
Right.
Because really what drives your whole life is how you took the world in as a child. How was the world presented to you? How did you take it in? And how is it playing itself out? People know about child abuse, whether physical, sexual, or neglect, and they think, oh, that's, something really big, and they think of it as events. But so much that trips people up isn't really done by parents as any form of that they're thinking they're abusing their child or anything like that. They don't realize how they're presenting life to their child. And, whether they're, if you take something like parents who don't have very much money and they're ashamed of that and they don't want to admit that to a child. And so a little kid quite naturally says, I want this Xbox really, really bad. And because the mother or the father can't handle, their own shame about not having any money, they say, you just want everything. Well, your problem is you just want everything. You think everything should just be handed to you on a silver platter. The child takes that in as, I'm a really bad person.
Right.
But what the parent is actually responding to is something inside of themselves, not realizing the message they are then giving to their child. And so these things are taken in very deeply, determining then how we will interpret the world for the rest of our lives, unless you begin to tune into what your narrative of your life is.
Right. I'm glad that you touched on the fact that a lot of times parents aren't coming from a malicious place when they're doing that. It's just they're dealing with their own stuff that they haven't processed through. And I spend a lot of time in therapy working with clients on that. Well, how come my parents didn't do this, or why didn't my parents show me love, or my parents never gave me a hug, and being able to help them process through that. They were just coming from a place of within themselves that they hadn't worked through.
But that doesn't mean that you weren't hurt by it.
Right.
You were
right.
hurt
Absolutely.
by it.
Yeah.
And beginning to know what did cause emotional injury to you, and then what can you do in terms of going into your own story and realizing that you did deserve to be loved. You
Right.
did deserve to be lifted up and given the things that you needed. You know, Eric Erickson, many years ago, identified the stages of development, emotional development. And I think like the first one is trust versus mistrust. You know, can I trust the world? And that goes from birth to, I think, like 18 months, where if I feel safe in my mother's or father's arms, does the world feel, you know, like a place that I can move in and trust?
Right.
And if that initial thing is broken, and I work with people all the time who, for whatever reason, were not given a feeling that the world is a place I can trust, they struggle with, you know, massive things like going forward. They're in a relationship and they can never trust that their partner really loves them. And they're demanding that the other person prove to them over and over and over again that they're loved. It's a very painful place to be. And the second stage is one of autonomy versus shame. And, you know, can I go out and try things?
Right. Can I take a risk?
Yeah, can I take a risk? Or am I too ashamed, too afraid? And you can see then how that's going to play out. And again, most of these things are done to children without malicious intent.
But like you said just a little bit ago too, how it doesn't mean that it didn't impact you or that it wasn't hurtful. And I think for people to remember, sometimes people, oh, it was just so long ago. Like I shouldn't still be dealing with this. I should be past this. I'm an adult now. I know these things. But until you slow down to take the time to figure out what that script is, it still is playing out.
And going within yourself to actually find a way to heal. You know, the example I like to give with what you're saying, Sarah, is that if you broke your leg when you were 10 years old and no one noticed, and I've asked people in the medical field this question, what would happen? Well, your leg would find some way to heal. It wouldn't be good.
Right.
And it would be messed up. And so then I like to say, so it's been 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Is it okay now? Is it just okay? And they'll go, no, it's messed up. It doesn't go away.
Right.
And then, you know, I remember giving a talk many years ago, and there was a physician in the audience, and I said, so what would you have to do to get that leg to be okay? And he grimaced, and he described a gut-wrenching process of re-breaking the leg, setting the leg, physical rehabilitation, and multiple surgeries to get that leg to function.
Right.
If you were hurt, and maybe over and over and over again, it's not that just because it's been 20 years, you get over it.
Right.
It's been 30 years. Or that's just what everybody did. Everybody was hit by a belt back then.
Right.
Everybody was that was done to everyone. Well, nobody said I love you back then. So that it's okay. No, it doesn't work that way. And you are going to have to go in and move into the pain so that you can release it and understand it and find a way to love yourself. You know, well, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, so if somebody isn't sure what their script is, or maybe isn't even sure or didn't even know that they had a script, what are some things that might be going on in their life that might be a clue that there's something there that needs to be worked out?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, if you never trust that someone loves you,
That's a big one.
that's kind of a big one. If you never believe that that's available, or if you find yourself in relationships where you're always mistreated, those are clues.
Okay.
Or if you have fears that don't make any, quote, make any sense. Social anxiety, just any number of things that could be tripping you up. One of the things that you can do to begin to, you know, and we always like to give you a little something that you can do to maybe begin to understand or get in touch with what your narrative might be. Remembering that you are the hero of your story. You're not just in your story, you are the hero of your story.
Yeah.
But when you think about being the hero of the story, what does the hero need to do? The hero needs to slay the dragon, and all the hero has is a sword. And you're going to take on this dragon, and that's exactly how it feels.
Right.
And, getting in touch with what might be that thing back there that seems to stop you from fully living your life. There's just a lack of joy, a sadness, a lack of connection, just a feeling like you're never good enough, you're never really accepted, or you feel like you have to please everyone. Everyone has to like you all of the time. Irrational beliefs like that.
Yeah.
So
what do you have?
What do I have? I have
for us to practice. What do you got, Mary?
Well, I have an idea, and that would be if you start to want to get in touch with what your life narrative is and to begin to shift it, I would encourage you to sit quietly and close your eyes and think back to your childhood. Just let the memories flow for a couple of minutes, visualizing these moments from your past in a vivid way. Just really taking the time to let your mind go back to what you remember from your childhood. Perhaps getting a picture of yourself when you were a little kid and taking a look at that. As you do that, write down one moment during your life that you remember that was not so pleasant, had a not so pleasant impact on you. And this would just be one piece that might begin to create the awareness that we're talking about. And then as you make a list of the emotions from that moment that come forward, it begins to reveal the theme of your narrative. And perhaps that begins to drive your life. Perhaps you were bullied. I'm thinking of somebody I worked with who was terribly bullied. And so that's something that didn't happen within her family, but her family didn't know what to do for her. And the kids were relentless. And so she took in that I don't fit in, there's something really wrong with me, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm no fun. They called her horrible names and did nasty things. And so it just got deep inside of her. And to be honest, this woman is absolutely gorgeous. And she has no idea that she is. And she's very bright and very fun. But she struggles with knowing, struggles. No, she absolutely doesn't know. She doesn't know that. Because these things so impacted her that she sees none of this. And that drives her whole life and her beliefs about the world. She finds a lot of difficulty in terms of having the right to ever feel good about herself.
Right.
So if you start to reveal the theme of your life, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, whatever the theme would be, and you want to use your own very specific words. Try to stay away from the self-helpy words, but to get into what is the theme. I'm all alone. Everything is mine to do. No one's here for me. No one's going to show up. I mean, there are all kinds of themes that people discover that they have.
Right.
You can't count on anyone, ever. Looks like Sarah has something to say.
Well, I was just going to say that you had mentioned thinking of a time where, I'm not sure the exact words that you used, but basically you have a memory of something that created some uncomfortable emotional impact. And when you were talking about the theme, is there might be multiple memories that you need to put together that helps kind of clarify what that theme is.
Don't do this on a level that it overwhelms you, please.
Right.
But do it gently. All of this is to be done very gently and with tremendous love. You might find too that when you look at a picture of yourself as a child, that you have a negative feeling towards that child. You know, if you were made to feel that there's something very wrong with you and that you're the one causing all the problems in the family, if it wasn't for you, we would be fine, you likely will have a negative reaction to this little girl or little boy. And I want you to know that that's a normal thing. You have been told that, and so you believe that. Mm-hmm. And to very gently begin to know that. And of course, no child deserves that.
Right.
It's amazing, too, how many people I've worked with who they would never treat a child the way they treat the child inside of them. Mm-hmm. They would never believe a child deserves to be beaten. They would never believe a child deserves to be sexually abused. They would never believe a child deserves to be neglected. But they'll say, but I think it's okay that it was done to me.
Right.
And they get real stuck there.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuck is a good word. And I think by being intentional about figuring out what your script or what your narrative is can help separate the problem or what happened from ourselves.
Right.
And so we can begin to get unstuck when we can create some separation where it's not all mixed together. It's not all one big problem. They're two separate things.
Yeah. So as you begin to discover perhaps this memory, you know, you go to a place then, separate from that, of a time when you felt fully loved. Again, it could be by your dog, your cat. Love is love. Mm-hmm. And see if you can begin to see this memory, begin to see this child from a place of love, knowing that you would treat no other child the way you're treating that child. Do this, again, very gently and with tremendous care for yourself. It can be very important, of course, to sit down with somebody who understands these things and can be a witness to your event. And so depending on what you discover, you may want to talk to someone, a therapist, or a pastor, someone who actually understands how these things are, a naturally therapeutic person, so that you can find the love for that child that the child deserves. What we're talking about is beginning to change your theme. And this is really the first episode of this topic. Whatever you do with the things we said today, again, please do it very gently and with tremendous love. That's our intention. I'm going to leave my part with a quote from Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
very good.
Your last thoughts, Sarah?
Well, I have some again today. I just think that this part, and part of why we chose to go this route and do this episode today, is that this is really a foundation point for people. This can be built on. But if you don't address this and you don't deal with this and figure out what that script is or what's keeping you stuck or what are these rules that you're following that really make no sense, that it's going to be a lot harder for you to progress and to live fully in your life. Mm-hmm. So that's
all the mindfulness techniques in the world, all the relaxation in the world will only be Band-Aids until you go and you find out, okay, what is it that's really playing out in my life? And remember Costa Rica. There are as many ways to believe as there are people. And so you don't have to continue to believe these things about yourself and your life. So remember, live your life with intention, passion, and purpose. Until next time.